Okay, so you're trying to wrangle some code and keep running into this thing, this facade design pattern.
Yeah, it comes up a lot.
We're going to dive into that today using refactoring.guru as our guide.
Sounds good to me.
Now, it might seem a little intimidating at first glance, I get that.
Oh yeah, lots of diagrams and stuff.
But trust me, once you break it down, it's surprisingly straightforward.
Okay, I'm listening.
Think of the facade pattern like a control panel for your code. You know those huge libraries, the ones packed with features?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Super powerful.
How about a real pain to work with directly sometimes?
Exactly. And that's where the facade pattern comes in. You know, it helps simplify how you interact with all that complexity.
Sort of a one-stop shop for all your coding needs.
That's a great way to put it. We're going to dig into the problems this pattern solves and why it's so valuable. Like, think about how much easier it makes testing your code.
Makes sense.
And of course, we'll use a real-world analogy to make sure it all clicks. Then we'll even peek at some code, just to see the facade in action.
All right, let's dive in.
All right, so first things first, what problem are we even solving with this facade thing?
Right, got to start with the basics.
Let's say you're working with, I don't know, a powerful library for video conversion. Just like the example they use in the SORC material.
Okay, video conversion, I can picture that.
These libraries are amazing. They can do so much, but...
But that power comes with a price.
Oh, absolutely.
Like trying to interact with every single class and method directly.
Ugh, don't even get me started.
It'd be a nightmare, like navigating a jungle without a map.
Exactly. You'd be tripping over dependencies, running into errors left and right.
And your code would become impossible to maintain.
A complete disaster.
That's where the facade pattern swoops in to save the day.
Like a superhero.
Kinda. Instead of getting lost in that jungle, it gives you a well-defined path.
Ah, a simplified interface to work with.
You got it.
So we're not trying to dumb down the library itself, right? It's more about making it more manageable.
Exactly.
For us developers, the poor souls who have to work with it.
The facade pattern basically creates a middleman between your code and that complex library.
A middleman, huh?
Yep, and this middleman, the facade class, provides a set of simplified methods.
And those methods sort of hide all the messy details.
You got it. All the behind-the-scenes stuff is taken care of.
Okay, I think I'm starting to see the light here. But can you give me a real-world example, something I can wrap my head around?
Sure. Imagine you're calling a restaurant to order takeout.
Takeout. Always a good idea.
You talk to the person who answers the phone, tell them what you want.
Right. Then they handle everything else.
Payment, telling you when it's ready, all that. They're acting as a facade.
Hold on. So I'm the client in this scenario.
Yep.
The person taking my order is the facade.
Right.
And the chaotic kitchen with all the cooks and whatnot, that's the complex subsystem.
Perfect analogy. You don't need to know how the kitchen works, just what you want to order.
I like it. So the facade is shielding me from all that kitchen chaos.
Exactly. Making it way easier to get your delicious food.
Okay, that makes sense. But back to the code, what does a facade actually look like?
All right, so let's stick with that video conversion example. Imagine a facade class called, say, video converter.
Okay, video converter, got it.
It could have a simple method like convert. You give it the file name and the format you want.
And it just handles everything else.
All the encoding, the whole process.
So instead of writing tons of code to interact with that library directly,
You just use this one method.
that's pretty slick.
It simplifies things a ton. And here's the kicker. The classes within that complex library. They have no idea the facade even exists.
Wait, seriously, so it's like this invisible force making everything work.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's what we call decoupling. The subsystem, the library, it's completely independent. The facade just provides a simple way to work with it.
Now, hold on. Wouldn't adding a facade just add another layer to everything? Isn't that, like, more complex?
That's a good question. But remember, that complexity already exists in the library.
True.
The facade isn't adding complexity, it's managing it.
Oh, okay, I see.
It gives you a clear entry point, you
Yeah.
know, without getting bogged down in all the nitty-gritty.
So it's like having, like, a customer service rep who knows exactly how to navigate a company's systems.
That's the idea.
They make it easy for me to get what I need without jumping through hoops.
Exactly. And there's another benefit to this whole decoupling thing, which is...
Oh, now this is where things get really interesting. So what's this other benefit? You got me on the edge of my seat here.
Okay, so because you've got that facade there, right, acting as a buffer between your code and the library,
Right, a buffer.
you can actually make changes to the library without messing everything up.
Like serious changes.
Even swap it out entirely, as long as that facade interface stays the same.
Oh, wow.
Your code doesn't even need to know what's happening behind the scenes.
So it's like if the restaurant changed its supplier or got new ovens,
Exactly.
I wouldn't notice, as long as I still had my favorite dish.
Perfect analogy. The facade insulates your code, makes it more robust.
Less likely to break when things change. That's a good thing.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But, you mentioned that God object thing earlier.
Right, right. The potential pitfall.
What if we cram too much logic into the facade itself?
Ah, yeah, that's a valid concern.
It could become this huge, messy thing, just as bad as the original library.
Like having one person at the restaurant trying to do everything.
Taking orders, cooking, serving, managing the money.
Total chaos.
Yeah, that place would go out of business fast. So how do we avoid that?
Well, one way is to break down that mega facade into smaller ones.
Smaller, more focused facades, you mean?
Exactly. Each one handles a specific part of the complex system.
So instead of one giant facade doing it all.
You delegate, create a more modular system.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
It prevents that God object issue, and your code's more organized.
Easier to understand, easier to maintain, win-win.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm really seeing how helpful this facade pattern can be.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's like having blueprints to navigate a really complex machine.
I like that analogy.
But before we go to facade crazy, I'm curious,
Shoot.
how does this pattern fit in with all the other design patterns out there?
Ah, good question. It's not like they're all completely separate, right?
Yeah, it's all connected somehow.
Think of design patterns like tools in a toolbox.
Okay, I like that. Each tool has its own purpose.
You wouldn't use a hammer for every job. Same with design patterns.
So it's about choosing the right tool, the right pattern for the specific problem.
You got it. And sometimes you might even combine multiple patterns
Ooh, get fancy.
to create really elegant code. For example, the facade pattern often gets compared to the adapter pattern.
Oh yeah, you mentioned adapter earlier. Something about incompatible interfaces.
Yep, that's the one. Both of them try to improve how different parts of your code talk to each other.
But they go about it in different ways.
Slightly, yeah. Remember that travel adapter analogy?
Oh, the plug with the different prongs for different countries.
That's it. Say you have a device with a 3-prong plug. You need to plug it into a 2-prong outlet.
Happens all the time when I travel.
The adapter would basically change the shape of the plug to fit.
So it's like physically modifying something to make it work.
Exactly. In code, the adapter takes an existing interface and tweaks it.
To match the expectations of another one, right?
Yep. It's about bridging that gap between incompatible components.
Whereas the facade, it's more about creating a new, simpler interface.
Right on. It's not changing the underlying system, just making it easier to use.
Okay, I get it. One's modifying, the other's providing a new way to interact.
Perfect. Now, another pattern that often comes up alongside facade is the abstract factory.
Ooh, that sounds complicated.
Then let the name scare you. It's not as bad as it sounds.
Okay, good. I'm not ready for any super advanced theory today.
The basic idea is it provides a way to create families of related objects.
Families of objects.
Without specifying their concrete classes, that's the key part.
So like a factory that can produce different types of cars, but
But you don't need to know the exact model to order one.
exactly. My code doesn't have to worry about how to create each object.
It just asks the abstract factory, give me a car, and it handles the details.
Pretty efficient.
Right. It adds a layer of abstraction, makes your code more flexible.
But how is that different from facade? They both seem to simplify things.
You're right, they do. Both of them hide complexity from the client.
But their focus is different.
Subtle, but yeah. Remember, Facade provides a simplified interface to an existing subsystem.
Like that video encoding library we talked about.
Exactly. Abstract Factory is more about creating new W objects.
But in a flexible way, so I can easily change things up later.
Precisely. It's like having a master blueprint for building different structures.
Oh, I like that. You don't have to redesign everything from scratch every time.
That's the idea.
Okay, I think I'm starting to see the subtle differences between these patterns.
It takes a bit of practice, but once you get it, it's really useful.
Like having different lenses for your camera, each one for a specific purpose.
That's a great way to put it.
This has been so helpful. We've gone from feeling lost to having a clear map.
Glad to hear it. And remember, this is just the beginning of your exploration.
Yeah, there's so much more to learn about design patterns.
Whole world out there.
I feel much more confident about using the facade pattern now, though.
That's what we like to hear.
We covered so much: the problem, the analogy, the structure.
Advantages, pitfalls, even how it relates to other patterns.
Ew, quite the journey.
And before we wrap up completely,
Ooh, a grand finale.
just one final thought-provoking idea I want to leave you with.
All right, lay it on me. What's this final thought?
So we've been talking about how Facade simplifies things in code, right?
Yeah, making those complex systems easier to handle.
But what if we could apply that same idea outside of programming?
Ooh, now you've got me thinking.
Like, what if we could use Facade to simplify other stuff in our work, our lives?
Okay, give me an example. I'm intrigued.
All right, think about project management.
Okay, lots of moving parts there.
Huge projects, tons of tasks, deadlines. It can get overwhelming.
Especially for people who aren't involved in every single detail.
Exactly. What if we created a facade for the project itself?
So instead of everyone needing to see every little thing,
You'd have this simplified view, just the essential information.
like a dashboard, highlighting the key stuff, progress trackers, milestones.
That's the idea, shielding people from all the complexity underneath.
I like it. It's like a user-friendly interface for the project.
Makes it way easier for everyone to understand what's going on.
And their role in it all without getting lost in the weeds.
Exactly. And this could work in other areas too, like think about a CRM system.
Customer relationship management, this can be pretty intense.
Instead of everyone accessing the same giant database,
Sales, marketing, customer support, all trying to make sense of it.
you could create different facades tailored to each team.
Oh, so the sales team sees what's relevant to them,
Sales opportunities, customer interactions, that kind of thing.
and marketing gets their own view,
Yeah,
focused on campaigns and leads.
exactly. Everyone gets a simplified version of the data.
Makes things more efficient, less room for mistakes. I see it.
And you don't need to be a programmer to use this idea.
Really? So anyone could apply this?
Absolutely. Simplifying, abstracting, decoupling, these are powerful concepts.
Wow, this has really opened my eyes. Taking these ideas from coding and applying them to, well, everything.
That's what we were hoping for.
This deep dive has been fantastic. We started with the facade pattern,
All the technical details, how it works, why it's useful,
but we ended up exploring these broader ideas, these design principles.
that can be applied to so much more than just code.
I feel like we've unlocked a new way of thinking about problem solving.
That's awesome to hear. Hopefully our listeners feel the same way.
I think they will. We've demystified the facade pattern, shown how versatile it is.
And hopefully sparked some ideas about applying these concepts in other areas.
Exactly. So on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive.
Keep exploring, keep learning, keep those brains working.
And if you have any thoughts or questions about the facade pattern,
Or any other design principle that's got you curious.
reach out to us on social media. We'd love to hear from you.
Until next time, happy coding and happy simplifying.